Smarties, we are very excited to welcome a parent of one of Steph's clients at M.Ed Therapist. Sarah is the mother of Finn, a 10th grader who has had a long emotional journey leading up to educational therapy and in educational therapy with Steph. Finn is an elite athlete who was struggling to balance his sport and his academics, and Sarah shares how she partnered with Steph even when it felt hard to her. Steph shares how it was difficult to build trust with Finn, who was extremely reluctant about educational therapy and the impact that it could have. She shares how she established communication with Finn, both in session and outside of session, and how he learned to trust and eventually partner with her. Sarah also shares how transformative educational therapy has been for her entire family. If you are interested in having this transformative experience, we would love to invite you to schedule a call with us. You can schedule a call with Steph at www.myedtherapist.com, and you can schedule a call with me at www.kappedtherapy.com. Also, don't forget to make sure you're on our email list so you can get alerted when we have new offerings or behind the scenes things or a new episode is up. You can do that by going to our website, www.learnsmarterpodcast.com. Let's dig in.
You want to learn faster, but sometimes working harder is just not the answer. You have to learn smarter. The Educational Therapy Podcast.
Hi, Smarties. Welcome to episode 315 of Learn Smarter, the Educational Therapy Podcast. I'm Stephanie Pitts.
And I'm Rachel Kapp.
And today I am honored to have Sarah on the podcast. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
And Sarah is the parent of a student in my practice that was one of my personal clients. And so I wanted to have Sarah come on and talk about Finn's journey, because this one has been an emotional journey, but it has a good outcome. And so, I know this was a real struggle for you. And so I thought, there's a lot of other parents out there who are feeling what you're feeling, and they would be able to relate to your story, and hopefully you can give them a little hope.
I'll try. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Rachel. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hi. We're excited to have this conversation. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story that brought you to Steph and M.Ed Therapist and down this path?
Sure. I have a son who's currently 15 years old, and he plays sport professionally. And he's played this sport since, he was 5, since he could first kind of walk and handle, a ball.
Mm-hmm.
And all through elementary school, he was a good student. I mean, like reading comprehension was never really his thing, but we always had the support, and he did it. And he got A's and B's and got through it. Then COVID hit, and then that was challenging for many, as you both know. We were fortunate, and we had hired a couple teachers for him and his friends to stay current and have in-person interaction through middle school during COVID. So that helped a lot. I'm sure it still didn't take the place of being in a classroom, daily with a teacher, but we got through it. And he managed to get out of middle school with honors. Like he had, I think it was a 3.4 at the time. So we were okay. Like we were happy. A/B student,
Mm-hmm.
socially great, athletically he at the top of his game. So everything was going well. And then he entered high school, which of course is a different experience completely. And his schedule changed, and academically it was much more rigorous. Relied on him to be self-motivated and to take this journey on and be a part of it and involved, and less about the parents being involved and more about being an advocate for yourself. And Finn is a good student, but he's a good student in a small setting with a heavy hand, not meaning an intense, but somebody who's really going to hold him accountable. And if they hold him accountable, he'll rise to the occasion. Well, in the environment that he was in freshman year, it's just a larger classroom, probably around 30 to 35 kids. And so he falls someplace in the middle and tends not to get the attention that he needs. And he wouldn't advocate for himself either. So he just kind of goes through it and doesn't really ask for help, identify when he needs help, identify when he's not understanding something, and just thinks it's okay and like, oh, I'll figure it out. I'll get through it. Well, he starts out strong, and then the grades start dipping, and then we get the tutors involved, and then we start tutoring, and then there's a lot of animosity at home, a lot of fights, a lot of battles, a lot of tears on my end, not so much his end, but my end, just trying to figure out how to fix it, how to make this work, how to support him. So we get to a point where it would work, and then it would fall off again. So it was a constant ebb and flow. He'd do great, he'd fall off. There was no consistency in his work ethic. So we got through freshman year. I think we got through freshman year with another like 3-4, which we're like, okay, good, we're good. The entire time he was promoted to a higher level of his sport. So he's playing at an elite level during freshman year. And before we got into the school, I asked for an ASA, which was an academic support scholarship, which meant that he would get credit for PE so that he wouldn't have to take PE, that his sport would count for his PE. The school would not give it to me. I fought for it from July before freshman year all the way through the end of the school year of freshman year. Took it all the way up to the superintendent. Everyone said no, and they wouldn't allow it because they said the sport he played didn't qualify, which was really difficult for me to understand because how do you identify what sport qualifies and what sport doesn't? If your child's playing at an elite level, which it clearly states in the California state documents for an ASA, then they should get this accommodation.
And it's not an obscure sport, and he's playing hours and hours every day.
Right. So it was getting challenging for him to balance the sports schedule and the academic schedule because the school, is intense and had a lot of homework. And then as soon as he was done, he'd have to come home, get in a car, drive an hour and a half, play for 3 hours, drive home for an hour and a half. And the school isn't willing to understand that. And then needless to say, they would start pulling him out of school too. The sport would start pulling him out of school to travel. So he'd be missing 3 days, sometimes a week at a time. And then that's when it really started to affect him. He couldn't bounce back from being absent that much. And the school wasn't willing to help in any way as much as we went and asked for the help and pleaded and pretty much cried in the superintendent's office that my child needs help. Nope. So we left there thinking, okay, how are we going to fix this? Tutoring all summer long. We had him tutor all summer long just to stay current and stay on top of things. And then sophomore year rolled around, and another child who was on the same team as him also decided they were going to ask for the ASA at the school. So we both went in this time asking for it. They shut us down again. We both said, how are we going to do this? Because our children really want to play this sport, and it could be on a path to a professional position. And we wanted to support them. The school wouldn't allow it. And then one day the school decided for no rhyme or reason that they would give us the accommodation and allow the children to get credit for their sport, not take PE, and be able to get out of school early, which was huge. And we were very grateful for that. So that being said, he had to start school earlier in order to make this happen. So we had to have a 0 period. So we had to start at 7:30, meaning getting up at 6:45 every day, getting to school, getting through all of his subjects, and then leaving and then going straight to practice again because they changed the practice times earlier. So he did it, and he never fought, he never argued, but what he was doing was not being honest and forthcoming with his academics. We would check in constantly, ask if he did the homework, asked if he studied for the test. The answer was always yes. And then we'd get the test back, and then we'd get an F on the test. Or then we'd come back and we'd see 3 missing assignments. I'm like, you told me you submitted this. And like, oh, I forgot. I go, well, so you lied. So then it was this whole other thing we had to unravel about him lying to cover up the fact that he wasn't doing the work and not putting the work in. So that was a bigger deal, and trying to figure out why he was doing that and how do we correct that?
How do we help him?
How do we support him?
When he would say that he had submitted something, for example, and then you would later find out, was his plan to submit it? Did he believe that he was going to do it, so he just was going to avoid the conversation with you guys?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes he was planning on doing, other times it's like, I just forgot and I'm just didn't even think about even trying to hand it in. I mean, he
Not a priority.
trying to get him to understand that this was affecting his grades. And the more you do this, the harder it is to come back was a big challenge. Like, I don't know if he didn't care enough, he didn't understand it, didn't want to understand it, or just, and Stephanie, you could probably jump in on this one, the more we uncovered later, I think it was just really difficult for him to be failing at something and hard for him to ask for help when he didn't understand something. He was afraid to ask for help, to say, I don't understand this. I still don't understand this. I don't know what to do. I need help.
Mm-hmm.
He is not that kid. And it was really hard to get him to that place. This was sophomore year, kind of midway through first semester. So fortunately, I have an amazing, amazing friend who is a therapist and referred me to Stephanie, and it was life-saving. She suggested that we reach out, which I did. And thank you so much, Stephanie, for making the time in your schedule, because I'm probably going to cry now.
Aww.
But it was huge. I mean, we talked to him about it, and he was very apprehensive and didn't want to do it. I did take him to a therapist to get assessed because we thought there could be a learning disability as well. And they diagnosed him with ADHD. Not severe, just the basic. It was definitely there. We're like, okay, so what do we do to fix this? So thankfully, my friend told me about Stephanie. We got into Stephanie. I told you about my son. Well, I should say I tried to let Stephanie take over, and it was really hard. Really hard because I'm such a micro.
It's a really good conversation to have because I know it was very hard for you.
Yeah.
And I don't blame you.
Yeah. So how did you navigate that?
Well, Stephanie said she would be responsible for checking in with him, but then she was also great because what we did is I emailed his school and put Stephanie on as a person that should be in contact with the counselors and also get access to his grades and his homework and his weekly updates. So Stephanie had access to all of that, which was really helpful because it took a lot of pressure off me, because the anxiety of getting the Monday morning email every week and seeing the missing assignments and the poor grades was just terrible. After a weekend prior to that, going, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you study? And all I got was yes, yes, yes. And then I see the grades Monday morning and it was F's and D's. And yeah, exactly. So that was really helpful. And then I had many, many long conversations with Stephanie to find out, why aren't things changing? Like, he's still not doing well. I don't understand this process. Why isn't he doing better? And she reassured me that it was going to take a while. Like, it's not a quick fix. He's probably going to do worse before he gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's probably going to be tears before we get to even a slight increase in a grade or an understanding. But it was really more about, and I think she really helped me understand, the process of getting him to be his own advocate and getting a system in place to help him do the work and do it the proper way, meaning you don't study for a test the night before. You start studying for a test a week before, if not longer. If you have homework, you do it the first day it's given, not the last day it's due.
Sarah, are you looking for a job? Because we're both hiring.
Actually, I would love to. No, it's something that I'm passionate about and I always have been, just children and education. And I feel that it's so difficult to find people who really care and who are invested. There's some really good people out there. It's hard to find them sometimes.
Yeah, fair enough.
And really on an individual basis to identify, because every child learns so differently. And I think that was what I also found out through this, that just because your child learns differently doesn't mean they're not smart or they're incapable. They just learn differently. Everybody takes in information in different ways, and you just have to find the way that works for your child.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, Steph, I'm curious, what was your experience when you met Finn? How did he present? Because we get asked all the time, right? Like, the kid doesn't want to come do it. The parent wants to be out of it. You guys want the stress to be mitigated. You don't want that Monday morning email anxiety anymore, which, by the way, why can't they send it on Friday so you could address it over the weekend? But okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another conversation for another time. But what was your experience with Finn?
So when Finn first came in, it was very much straight face, not understanding why he was there, just I've got this, I don't need you type of attitude. He had this bravado that was very hard to crack. He's very successful in his sport and he's young. The fact that he's so successful at such a young age, it just comes naturally to him. And so he happens to play the sport that I played, and we had stuff in common. And so I could talk to him about it and sort of talk to him about being a coach, about what we were really trying to do. And I saw him twice a week. Every session, it was the same thing of me saying to him, this is me trying to help you so that you can do this yourself and you don't have to come see me anymore. And I just kept having to reiterate that. Do you want your parents off your back? Yes. Okay, then you have to let me in and let me help you. And it took a long time. I probably said to him almost every session for weeks, if not months, I know you hate this. I know you hate coming to me. I know you don't want to be here. You can hate me as much as you want, but I'm still going to be here to help you. So let's do this together. And it was just a constant over and over and over again. And it took months. And as you know, I've talked about this because it took so long for me to crack him, so to speak. And there was a point where he was testing the boundaries. And he was sort of like pushing me and didn't want to do whatever it was. It was hard, basically. And he was pushing back a lot. And I had to get to the point where I said, if you don't want this, then you need to walk out of my office and I'll tell your mom that you don't have to come back. I had to get to that point with him. And I basically said that in some words to him. And I was like, okay, then I'm going to be done. You can leave. And he looked at me.
You called his bluff.
I called his bluff hard.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, he just sort of like sat there, like he sort of took it in, like, no, that's not what I want. And I was like, you need to really think about what you want. You need to really, really think about what you want. That night, I got a text message, or maybe it was the next day, but I got a text message, a very long text message, apologizing for his behavior to me, which I later found out Sarah didn't even know about.
No, I had no idea.
And he said, I realize that the only way I'm going to get through this is with your help. I need you. And that was the turning point. That was the moment where then the next time he came in, I said, let's look at your work. What do you understand? What do you not understand? And then he would start saying, is that good? Did I do it right? And I would say, yeah. Or here, what about this part? And he'd go, oh, yeah. Like he'd miss parts because, his brain just was not able to catch everything. So he was open enough to let me look and say, here, what about this part? You need to do this part too. And he'd go, oh.
Total shift.
It was a total shift. So then we started just in this journey. I would check in with him. I would set an alarm on my phone and I sent him a text message almost every day. And he responded. He didn't ignore me. Occasionally he ignored me. But for the most part, he would always write me back. And I would say, what are you doing? On the days that he didn't see me, I had to get him to write in a planner, which was, as we know, always very hard. But he would do it and I would make him take a picture of it and send it to me.
Yep.
To see that he had done it and ask him his plan, what order, all the things that we would talk about in session, we would talk about on off days. And that sort of started going. We started to see some incremental, like small gains. But his sport was becoming more intense and the school getting more rigid about him missing. And so that's when we started to have a really long conversation about what it was that he really wanted, what he wanted for his sport and what he wanted for his education. And it came out in this conversation that he wanted to do a more homeschooling type program.
And really focus in on his sport.
And focus on his sport. That's where he wanted to really spend a lot of energy on focusing on his sport. And he felt like he would learn better if it was in a one-on-one type of environment.
Or in an environment where they understood the demands and were excited about that for him.
Yes. So then he and I had a conversation about, what if I just taught you 10th grade? And he was like, I would love that. I was like, okay, let's talk about this. This opened the conversation then to where we're at today, because then I said to him, okay, I'm not making any promises, but I will do everything I can to help you get there if that's what you want. So then back to Sarah.
What came up for you, Sarah, in hearing like Steph's story? How did you see the shifts kind of occur, and particularly after Steph was like, okay, be done. Go do you. And then he sent that apology text. Steph and I have both been the recipients of apology texts over the years. So like, but what came up for you? I saw you were writing something down too.
Yeah, well, it's nice that you get the apology text, first of all. I'm glad that they see that and realize it. Well, I mean, I had multiple conversations with Stephanie throughout just saying, is this working? I don't understand it. How is he doing? And she would say it was still a struggle. And so we would try and reinforce it at home and, tell him like, Stephanie's the boss. You have to implement what she says. Like,
she's the coach.
We're spending a lot of time, for you to do this. And you really need to take this seriously. And he said he did. Sometimes he would still ask, why do I have to go do this? We said, because you need help. That's why. And we're trying to get you the grades that we know you're capable of getting. So we were trying to support you to get there. He never told me that Stephanie gave him an ultimatum. He never told me that he sent an apology text. We did start seeing an increase. I mean, I think it was Spanish was the first grade was it Spanish or history? We started seeing an improvement in one of those classes. And at home, he was starting to initiate studying like weeks before. I said, do you have tests this week? Yes, I have a Spanish test on Friday. Okay, when are you going to start studying? He goes, I already started studying for it. I'm like, okay, great. That's really great. And we would just encourage him, like, that's what we want to see. Like, that's great. You're going to do so much better if you start doing that and implement what Stephanie wants you to do. So we just started taking it more seriously at home and really started devoting what little time he had to the studying. And a lot of that is, coming home and getting home at like 8:00 and being tired after 3 hours of training and then studying for a test and then finishing the homework. But he did it. I mean, he did it. So the grades were starting to improve a little bit, but we did have an issue with the school because he was getting pulled out of school for a tournament and we have to submit all of that to the school. And they did come back and say, he currently has a D in chemistry. We'll let him go this time, but we're probably not going to let him go next time. So that's when it became real for us. And we had to talk to him about that. Say, listen, if you don't improve your grades, they're not going to let you take off school. So you're going to have to miss that tournament. How do you feel about that? And he was not happy. And I think he got very nervous and
he did
started taking it more seriously and started improving. And at this point, besides seeing Stephanie, he was also seeing a chemistry tutor and a math tutor. So every single day after school, he was being tutored.
That's a lot.
So we were doing, and the tutors were very good. I mean, one was used to be a chemistry teacher, and then one was a geometry tutor, I guess you can say. And the grades were coming up a bit, but not good enough to get him where he needed to be to leave for the next big tournament, which was going to be in Maryland, and he was going to be gone for a week. And that was also, that just happened, and it was going to be right before final started. And I just knew, I'm like, this is going to be a huge impact. If we cannot get him to the place he needs to be before this tournament, he is not going to make it through finals. He's just not.
Yeah.
So that's when we talked to Stephanie, and she told me she had these conversations with him. I also met with a college counselor for the first time too. And what was really interesting, a college counselor who just met him for like a couple hours one day, met all three of us, and just sort of went through, this is what I do, this is what you need, what schools are you thinking about, this is what type of grades you need. She basically asked him, what do you think of school? His response was, I hate it. And she's like, wow, okay, well, you're going to need it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to go away. Like, so what's your plan? She's like, what's your plan to get there? Because you can't not go. And so he really didn't have an answer to that. But she said afterwards, she goes, you might want to consider like maybe a fusion type school. So my husband and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. So two people who are educated and do this for a living who both made the same recommendation for our son.
When the universe is starting to tell you something. Yeah.
Half the kids on his team get homeschooled. So last year, going into this freshman year, he wanted it off the bat. He's like, I just want to get homeschooled. Everybody's getting homeschooled. We're like, no, there's no reason for this. Let's just go through the proper channels. You can go to school. We can make this work. Obviously, we couldn't. We tried. I think he tried, but didn't fully try until probably he started working with Stephanie. Then he really started trying.
You have to have all these components in place. And if the school isn't on board with the larger goal and the larger passion, what are you supposed to do about that but find an alternative path for him?
Yeah.
That's his path.
And he's on the path to play professionally. And so that's what he wants. And part of the thing that got him to trust me was that I kept saying, I'm here to help you reach your goals. It might not look like you thought it will look, but if you want to reach them, you've got to put in the time and the effort, just like you do in your sport, in order to have that sport. So things have to go hand in hand. And I think after the conversations that we started having about having him go to a one-on-one school, and he just started to light up at the potential. And I didn't tell him that you and I were having conversations. I just said, I'm working on it. And that was all he needed to hear from me.
By the way, I get told when I ask Steph about stuff, she's like, it's under advisement. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Yep.
Well, I appreciate that because, we tried to keep it quiet until we were able to explore what the possibility was and what that really meant.
Right.
And to see if we were okay with that.
Yeah, he had some hope when I just kept saying, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I didn't tell him how or...
Yeah, you weren't telling him it was a hard no. It was just, it's in consideration. Understood.
Exactly. So, now that he's switched over, so he,
Oh, wait, I want to hear, Sarah, how did you come to that decision?
So after we talked to the college counselor, then we went back to Stephanie. My husband and I had a very long call with her, and she walked us through the conversation she had had with my son, his reaction to it, how excited he became about it. And then I just had a lot of questions as far as, well, is it an accredited school? Like, how does this work for colleges? And do they even take this school seriously? Will he be looked at the same as if he went to a regular private school or a public school? And just a lot of questions about that, like how the transition would work and if it would hurt him in any way to do this, not hurt him academically, but hurt him for his aspirations down the road as far as going to a D1 school. And will they look at him and even consider him at that point? As far as his sport, doesn't really impede him. They just want him there at practice and at the games every day. So whatever we need to do to make that happen, that's really it. So we had a long conversation about it. And then my husband and I went to the school, met with the administrator, and we were pleasantly surprised as far as how it was run. And it is accredited. And it's basically the same as going to any other high school. And
it's high school.
Yeah. And they approach it that way. And I think that was a big relief because I didn't really know what to expect. But it's serious and they hold him accountable. But the nice thing was they're accommodating, and we told him what he did and who he was playing for and what position he was in. They're like, oh my gosh, they were excited for him. They were excited that he had this opportunity that not too many kids have. And they want to support him. They want to support him in that dream to achieve that. And we're realistic. I mean, we know there's like a 1% chance, but as long as he still wants to do it and we can support him to get there, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And, if it doesn't work out, that's fine because he'll be educated and he'll still be able to go to college. And that was our biggest thing. I want him to be educated. I want him to enjoy learning. I want him to have a good education. I want him to be smart. I want him to be well-poised human being out in the world and be able to hold a conversation. And education is important. So we realized that he wasn't getting this at the current school, not because they don't offer it. There were just too many things in his way to get there. His schedule, getting up early, leaving early, not really participating in all the school had to offer. It was just more challenging there, and they weren't really willing to work with the schedule more than what they were doing. And that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed more, and we needed more support, and somebody who was really excited about his path and would be a partner with us in his path to get him where he wanted to be and educate him along the way.
Okay. So how was that?
At dinner one night, we had the conversation and mentioned that we might think of switching schools and giving him a more one-on-one experience at a different school. How do you feel about that? And his eyes get really big. Like, he doesn't say much, but his eyes get really big. And he looked, we're like, yeah, we're going to think about it. And we have a lot to figure out, but it might be a possibility. And we just wanted to find out how you felt about it. He said he was excited and this is something he wanted to do. So we mentioned that to Stephanie, and then we went back to the school to find out more about the actual process, what we needed to do to get records transferred. And because he would be transferring mid-semester, so I didn't know how that would work either. And it turned out that he would have to retake all of his second semester classes to wipe the slate clean at his current school. And so we mentioned that to him as well. We're like, listen, if we make this move and we take you to this other school where you'll get a one-on-one experience, you're going to have to retake all the classes you've already took. Do you still want to do this? That means you're going to be going to school all through the summer. And he said, yes, I want to do it.
Wow.
I said, okay. So we set up a meeting with the new school and we brought him with so he could meet the administrator. And they talked to him, asked him about his sport, asked him about his schedule, asked him about what was challenging with the classes that he had and what wasn't, which classes he liked, which classes he didn't, why. And then they said, yeah, well, we can make this work and this is how we could do it here. And so my husband and I said, would you be interested in doing this? He's like, yeah. We're like, okay, then let's do it. And his face just lit up. And it was the first time I saw him smile, like really smile.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. He like really smiled, and I could feel like it was such a weight that was lifted off him.
It was a relief for him.
Mm-hmm.
To know that he didn't have to continue this struggle.
It had been hard. You were about to remove some of the factors that were making it hard. He wasn't going to be suffering as much moving forward.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, that was on a Friday. And then the following Tuesday, we pulled him out of the school and transferred all of his records, and he started and he came home, and the whole house just feels lighter. We're not arguing about school anymore. He has the support there to help him with his homework after school. There's teachers there to help him. He gets it done. He now has a 98 in chemistry and a 98 in geometry, and we are thrilled beyond belief. And he's good, and he's got time to actually be at home and play with his dog and like be with his friends and do things that he didn't even have time to do before. To sit down, and he'll talk to us now, like actually talk to my husband and I. And he'll talk to us about school, and he'll talk to us about the things that he's learning in school, which he didn't do before.
Mm-hmm.
All a very special sort of transformation that you guys have all had in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to share on my end, that end part of the journey before he switched schools. And there was a math chapter. There were quizzes and tests. And I told him, have you studied for it? Do you understand it? And he's like, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it, which is like the classic answer that he would say. And I was like, all right, okay, you got it. Show me you got it, which I would call him out all the time. And so
Right.
he pulls it out, and it's stuff that like I sort of remembered, but not enough to reteach quite yet, like
Sure.
in geometry. And so I was like, okay, so show me you got this. No, he didn't have it at all. And I said, all right, well, I need to relearn this really quickly. Like, I'll teach you as I reteach myself. And he got so frustrated with me. And he said, this time would be much better spent if I just did this with the math tutor. And I said, I understand. However, we're going to do it now. And he just looked at me like, uh-oh, she's not going to let me go. She's not going to let me not do this. And I was like, we're doing this. Like, I don't care. We're doing this. I taught him the math. And afterwards he said, oh, that's really easy. And I said, yeah, it is. You just didn't know how to do it. That's all. Now you know how to do it. He took that quiz and he got an 84. It was the first time he had gotten above
A C.
Yeah, or a C- or something in math.
Yeah.
And he had the biggest smile on his face. And he was like,
He's proud of himself.
I understand this. And I said, yeah. He's like, wow, it's actually easy. And I said, yeah, I know you can do it. It's just, we've got to break it down and help you learn how to actually do it. And you need to practice.
Right.
The beauty of that moment too was that he got that B. So he left his school knowing like, oh yeah, I did get a B. I can do this. And it just was this really great timing to then, when he switched, to be able to go to the one-on-one and start really making moves in being able to do well. And I've checked in with him. I've texted him, how's school? And he's like, it's great, that kind of a thing. But the last day that he came to me, knowing that he was switching schools tomorrow, which I am so grateful that you understood the importance of me having a last session with him.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't need the support there that I was giving, which I told you right up front. He's going to go to this school and he won't need me anymore, but this is the best thing for him. And I wrote down what he said because I think it's really important. I said to him, what are your goals? And I want you to think about this differently now that you've got these opportunities and it's a different path for you. And he said, the first goal was to start to enjoy school, to do well in his sport by playing up a year older than he actually is, going pro at 19, and if not, to get a full ride somewhere and see his friends on the weekends. And so I said, wow, those are really great goals, Finn. Those are goals that are very well-rounded. And I said, okay, so we've talked about this journey together that you and I have had that has been a little bit
rocky.
So what would you say to yourself that first day that you came in and met me? And this is what he said. Be patient. This takes time. You'll have your ups and downs. It'll never be too down. You're taking the steps up. So that's what he would say to himself. And I wrote, he walked out of my office with a big smile. And I told him how proud I was of him and to take this opportunity to learn and become a leader and learn more about how his brain works and what's best for his brain. And then I told him if he goes to college, he has to come back.
He has to come back and work with you?
And he said, yeah, okay. Yeah.
What an opportunity, Sarah, that you and your husband have provided for him.
Yeah.
To be able to have this sort of transformation. And I know, because I do this work too, that Finn is one of the special ones, that he lived in Steph's brain and in her heart in between sessions. And that's a beautiful quality in a person, to be the one that we're like, we know we can get them. We'll get them. If I hear about one of Steph's clients, it's because he's living in her brain and heart. So what would you share, Sarah, to other parents? Because the one thing that I heard sort of time and time again in this story, I heard two things. The first is that you do your research. You ask a lot of questions. And the second thing that I also heard is that you listen to experts and you listen to what people are telling you, but you also didn't let Finn off the hook. A lot of times when we have these kind of kids, if we don't get them, it's because we haven't been given enough time with them.
And it took months, right, Sarah? It took me months. It really did.
Yes.
And the parents will acquiesce a lot of the time to the kid complaining that they don't want to go and they don't see the value of it. So what would you sort of share with other parents who have an extremely reluctant learner about this whole process?
And I'm sure other parents are the same way. You're so involved and you have so many breakdowns and there's so many tears and arguments and crying and fights and just you say things that you don't want to say. But at some point you really need to take a step back and you do have to look for people who are educated and professionals in this occupation and really be honest with yourself and listen to what they're saying, because it's really hard to do that with your own child. And it's really hard to identify what their needs are when you're not in the classroom because you only get so much information from the teacher. So you really need somebody to
totally
analyze them and evaluate them on a level to find out what they really need. And I think it's really hard as a parent because you know your kid, but you don't always know what they may need in certain areas, I think. And that's why there's professionals and that's why you rely on people to help you. And I think that was the hardest thing. I want to give credit to my husband on that one because I was shocked. He was the one who was ready to make the change immediately. And at first, he was really reluctant last year when we were even talking about it. And he's like, we've talked to two different people and they're saying the same things. What's the hesitation? So I think, but do your research, find the right people like Stephanie, and find the right people, whoever else, if it's a medical doctor or another therapist, find the right people. And you have to really trust them.
How did you know that Steph was the right person?
I think when she and I would talk, she spent so much time with me, talking me through the process when I was ready to throw in the towel and be like, you know what, this just isn't working for us. I don't think we're going to be able to do this. I don't see any change.
Yeah, like an ed therapy.
Yeah. She was always available to me, talked to me as long as I needed to be talked to about anything, and rehashing the same things over and over, because I would revisit the same subject. I'm like, well, why isn't this working again? And she'd go back and she'd talk me through it again and just walking me through the process. I think that's when I knew, like, she's invested in my kid. She's going to take the time. And she really cares. She cares and she wants him to succeed. And I felt like even if it wasn't with you, Stephanie, you were going to find the right place for us with him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that made me feel like, okay, I can trust that we're doing the right thing. And if this doesn't work, she's going to find the right place for us. She's going to help us.
Yeah, for sure.
And she did. And you did.
I'm so glad for him. I'm glad for you. I'm glad that our profession exists because this is exactly why we do what we do, honestly.
Coming from the outset, full disclosure, I didn't really understand what it was. And I didn't understand how it could help. Because I thought, okay, well, he's being tutored and we could just take him to see a therapist. Like, I don't understand how this is any different than what we've been doing. But it's hugely different because you understand the academics of it, you understand the mental aspect of it, and you understand the persona of the child and learning development and how that works and how to identify what their needs are.
I love our profession.
I do too. It's amazing.
I love the work that we get to do. The work that we get to do and the impact that we can have when there is a high engagement with a parent who's coachable.
Yeah.
And that's what I also hear is, like, he took him time to be coachable, but you were looking for that sort of partnership too, which is what we can offer.
Your job must be so rewarding.
Yeah.
And challenging. And challenging.
It is fun.
It's fun.
Yes. And as you know, you happen to have a best friend who I also see their child, and that child is doing much better. So I'm sure there's been conversations between the two of you about the changes.
Many conversations.
Their text chat is just Stephanie fans.
Because we both came to you with our kids at the same time.
I didn't know that you guys knew each other.
Yeah. And they're just as happy. And I know he enjoys going to see you as well. And we both see the benefit of it, a change in our children.
I just love that. I just love that you're sitting there saying that. I hope as a parent, if you're listening and you can just trust the process, we can get there.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest challenge. And I mean, I still, like, I call my 4 a.m. thoughts. I still wake up in the middle of the night going, oh my gosh, are we doing the right thing for him? Like, is this going to work out? I don't know if we made the right change. Should he still be back at the other school? I don't know. You're not going to know. You're just not going to know. And you have to take the chance, right? Or you just stay in your stagnant place with no change. So you have to make a move, try something different.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, then you go on to the next thing, right? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, thank you for taking the time to come on today. I'm really excited for our audience to get to hear this story. And I already texted Steph and I'm like, why isn't Finn scheduled to come on? And she's like, we'll ask.
Yeah, he might. I mean, he would probably be better than me. Yeah, because he went through it. So
I'll ask him if he wants to.
Well, stay tuned, Smarties.
Exactly. Stay tuned. Well, thank you, Sarah. You have had a powerful journey up until this point, and I know it's going to continue to be a journey. And just remember that sometimes steps forward, sometimes steps back, but he's still learning in the process, and one step at a time. And I'm here. So
Yes.
I'm excited that your home is
much more peaceful, just a happier place to be. No more arguments on Monday morning.
good.
Thank you.
Good.
So happy for you all.
Well, thank you both. Rachel, it was a pleasure meeting you. Stephanie, I cannot thank you enough for
My pleasure.
all your help and your constant support. So thank you. It's been a pleasure and a journey and a good one.
I'm glad.
Have a great week, Smarties.
Yay. Have a great week.
Have a great week.